So welcome back. I hope you've enjoyed the last couple of episodes of Funding Fridays. I know they've been incredibly well received from the feedback that we've been getting. So thank you. Please continue to listen to the entire episode. It only registers as having been watched or listened if you get to the very end credits. And we would love it if you would subscribe and share the links with your friends and your networks. I am delighted today to be joined by Nicola Deards, who's joining us from the Midlands Aerospace Alliance, talking to us today about arguably the most niche grant that we've covered so far, but it does have some really practical applications. So even if you are not currently in an aerospace business, please stay tuned and find out more about Aerospace UP. So Nicola, please introduce yourself, tell us who you are, where you're from, and a little bit about what your company does.
Great, thank you very much, Debbie. It's great to be here. As you said, my name is Nicola Deards. I'm a technology manager for the Midlands Aerospace Alliance. And we are a trade organisation, a very large one because we represent one of the biggest aerospace technology clusters in the world, actually. The Midlands isn't necessarily known as an aerospace area. We think of it as being automotive, but we have really strong aerospace in this region. And the MAA support a very big group of companies and advocates for them with government and works with them strategically to ensure that we've got a good profile in the country. I've been with the MAA just for a short period, really, just a few months, but we have quite a big team of technology managers with lots of different areas of expertise. I have an engineering background. I worked in industry for 30 years. The first 10 years were in automotive. And then I moved to the Midlands. I live in Leamington Spa, and I worked in aerospace for just over 20 years when the pandemic hit us all. You probably will realise that the aerospace industry was very heavily impacted by the pandemic because nobody was flying. And a lot of aerospace companies really struggled during that period. A lot of people took redundancy or were forced to take redundancy. I myself had a year off in the end. I decided to take voluntary because for family reasons, I wanted to be at home for my family. But after that year, I decided I've got to bite the bullet now, get back to work. And I was very pleased to have the opportunity to apply to be a technology manager with the MAA. They're a great team. They're a lovely organisation. And what I do now is I work with SMEs in the Midlands to support them in their innovation ambitions and to help them to apply for Aerospace UP grant funding and support packages. I find the work really interesting, very varied, meeting lots of different people. And so I'm thrilled to have got that job, and I'm really, really enjoying it.
Brilliant. And they've thrown you in at the deep end to come and present with us today.
Yes, yeah.
It's going to be a bit of a test of your knowledge. So you mentioned that this, tell us a little bit about the grant, the fund itself.
Okay, well, Aerospace UP is one of the last ERDF funding programs. We've got a bit of an extension on it because of the pandemic. So it runs now through to June 2023. It was originally about £20 million of funding. Obviously, we're getting towards the end now, so there are varying pots of money remaining now in the different local areas, but we still have a significant amount to give out. And so we're still reaching out to SMEs to tap into that. It's designed specifically to support SMEs in the Midlands. So the eligibility is really around the size of the company and turnover and whether they're based within our borders. And also they have to be trading financially and a viable business to become part of the Aerospace UP programme. And the programme has a couple of different aspects. It has the usual match funding type projects that can be anything from £1,000 to £100,000 of match funding, depending, as I said, on the local area that the company is in, depending on how much money there is left. but it can equally be used for support packages. So we've put together some support packages using our technology manager expertise and the network that we have to deliver either one-to-many or one-to-one support on anything from digitization of your company through to a general introduction to the aerospace sector, certification in aerospace quality standards, and things like additive manufacture, which we have a lot of expertise in. We've run some programs on that previously. So quite a wide range of packages that we can offer. And we can tailor packages as well. Using our technology managers, we can give one-to-one support on things like technology road mapping and marketing research and so on. So quite a lot of different things. A bit more of an explanation around the matched funding grants. They need to be for an innovation. They need to be genuine R&D. Having said that, the definition of R&D we use is a broad one, and many companies we find don't even realise that they're doing R&D when they're bringing on new capabilities or new services or processes to them. They have to do a fair bit of development to be able to become proficient. And that counts as an innovation grant because it's something that's new to them. And so we would match fund that, and we can match fund consumables, equipment, new employee salaries that are required for the project. Wow. And also third-party subcontractors, consultants, and so on. And travel that's necessary to the project as well. So you can. And
what percentage are those match funding?
For most of the LEPs, it's 42.67%.
Very specific.
There are 2 LEPs in which it's 53%. So it does depend where you are precisely geographically.
Brilliant, but approximately 40 to 50% match funding support is available. Now, you mentioned earlier that there are different types of companies that can tap into this. So in terms of eligibility, is it anything that goes in the sky? How do you define aviation?
It doesn't really have to even go in the sky.
Okay.
Because aerospace and aviation covers obviously the aircraft themselves. But even there's a wide range of aircraft. So you've got the very traditional large civil aircraft supply chain, which is very well established. But then you've got some new emerging markets in advanced air mobility, which is very small aircraft, the kind of sky taxis that we're starting to hear about, and the vertical takeoff vehicles. And you've also got space. The space industry comes under that umbrella. And as well, there's a lot of new supply chains building up around the push towards zero emissions. So there are new aircraft platforms being designed and developed, new types of fuel, for example, and all of those need new supply chains. We're bringing on quite a few companies who are involved in making lighter weight structures because that reduces increases the fuel efficiency. So all of those things are quite new. But then you've got the ground infrastructure as well. So around the airports and around the apron, around the aircraft when it comes into airports, there's a lot of services and products and technologies that are needed there. And again, related to these new markets, things like handling these new fuels and so on. All of this requires new technologies and innovations. And it's worth bearing in mind that there are a lot of technologies outside of aerospace which can be applied to aerospace. You know, we're working with a few companies that traditionally have a background in med tech or health tech, because particularly after the pandemic, everybody's much more aware we need cleaner, healthier air, cleaner, healthier environments. We want to do more monitoring of health on aircraft, perhaps in cockpits and so on. So there are lots of crossover technologies that we're looking at, and we're funding all sorts of different projects with a really wide range of technology backgrounds.
Fantastic. And how much support can you give our business owners if they want to inquire? Maybe they think they might have an innovation that would meet the criteria. What's the best course of action?
Well, the best course of action is to get in touch with us via the Aerospace UP website, or through the Midlands Aerospace Alliance. There are some standard emails. I'm happy for you to share my email that people can get in touch with me. And what we do is we will allocate each company a technology manager to talk you through what the programme is about in a bit more detail, how it works, how the funding is transferred, and so on. And we aim to have you allocated to a technology manager throughout. If you do end up enrolling and going through to having a project or a support package, you would keep that technology manager. They would help you to write your application for grant funding. And we do pride ourselves on having a fast track process, which is relatively light in admin. We understand that most SMEs don't have a big overhead for filling in reams and reams of forms that are complicated.
Amen.
So we keep it very light. I mean, obviously it has to be robust because this is public money we're spending, and we are subject to audit by the ERDF. But as long as we, we stick to the main rules, that we have a company that is genuinely eligible, and we have a genuine innovation that can be applied to the aerospace industry, then we very rarely turn anybody away, I have to say, and we really help them through the process. Right. And because of our fast track light touch process, we are capable of getting something from an expression of interest to a full grant approval in as little as 2 weeks.
Wow, that's really fast. And just to confirm, there's no retrospective spending that can be included. This has to be agreed in advance of any money changing hands for claims. Is that right?
That's right. Yes, it's the usual ERDF rules about that. So it has to be a new project, and you can't start spending your money until we've contracted, essentially.
Fantastic. And in terms of the eligibility of the businesses, does that vary? Is it worth us looking a little bit at the size of the business or minimum turnover requirements, or does it vary area to area?
All the areas are the same. So it has to be a genuine SME in the sense of less than, I think it's 50 million euros turnover, thereabouts. Yeah. But it has to have been trading so that we can check the credit worthiness of the company. So it has to have traded from the address that you're applying from. Yeah. And it can't be owned more than 25% by a company who are not themselves an SME. Awesome. So that's standard across all the areas.
Yeah, lovely. So I don't think there would be many of our audience who would be tripped up by that criteria. So that's fantastic. You mentioned earlier about boundaries and borders. What are the counties or cities that you include? Are you able to share those, or do we need to just refer them to the website?
Well, you might, I don't know if I can remember all of them. I'll have a go. So we've got, there's Greater Birmingham and Solihull. There's Derbyshire and Nottinghamshire. There's Leicestershire. There's the Black Country, the Southeast Semlep, awesome. Coventry and Warwickshire. And I think
Cambridge and Peterborough, or are they outside?
No, okay. They are outside.
Sorry, Cambridge and Peterborough, you can't get in on this one, but every other area you mentioned is in our catchment. So that's brilliant.
Great.
Is there anything we haven't talked about in terms of criteria or things that you need to know to prepare yourself? Anything else we haven't covered?
I would say that I think we've covered most things. It really is, I think it's worth everyone having a look who suspects they might have a chance of diversifying into aerospace. It's well worth having a look into it, and you might find that even if you don't end up taking up matched funding for an innovation grant, you might find that you can get some really good introductions to aerospace networks and what's happening, the new things that are happening in aerospace at the moment that I've touched on. We have introduction webinars on advanced air mobility, on space. and so on. So you can get to know more about what's happening in the aerospace sector. So I would definitely encourage everyone to have a look at the website, and the enrolment process to get access to these free webinars and events is very simple. It's just a 2-page form where you tell us about your business, and we simply check that you are an eligible SME, and then you are automatically enrolled, and you can hear about all those things that are happening, all those events and courses and so on.
Awesome. Now, you mentioned to me before we started recording drones, supply chain. What's been the most obscure or bizarre application that you've thought, I would never have thought to have used it on that? Is there anything that's been really left field, or businesses that you wouldn't necessarily think to that would meet the criteria?
Well, we do have an incredibly wide range of projects, and not all of them are really strange necessarily to those people who are familiar with those fields. But you know, some of your listeners may not have heard of sustainable aviation fuels. That's where we've got 2 companies actually in the Midlands who are taking municipal waste, effectively household waste, municipal waste, biomass, and they're turning it into clean, zero emissions fuel. Well, sorry, not zero emissions, but it reduces the overall emissions of the fuel, and it's sustainable because it's obviously we create waste, we then use that for fuel. You're not using as many fossil fuels, so that's something that, you know, it might be new to a lot of people. You might not realise that your biomass can go to fueling a big aircraft.
Incredible.
And we have all sorts of applications around autonomous vehicles, around the aircraft, and in airports, in aviation hubs that you might more typically associate with hospitals, for example. So some of the automated robots that are doing cleaning and things like that.
Brilliant.
So there's a lot of stuff going on.
I just know that our Clean Transport Accelerator entrepreneurs, as well as the groups that are connected into Cranfield, who've got the fantastic aerospace department, and SEMLEP as a LEP, I know that there will be lots of people that this really will benefit. So thank you for bringing it to them. Is there anything that we haven't covered that you absolutely must tell us about before we dial off for today?
Well, I should probably mention again the MAA. So although we're delivering Aerospace UP, we do that in conjunction with the University of Nottingham. So we have a team there also supporting us. We have a lot of networks into universities around the Midlands, into the original equipment manufacturers and the tier 1 aerospace companies. And we have really good relationships with a lot of the influential bodies like BAYS, Innovate UK, as well as a lot of leading aerospace experts in universities across the region. So if aerospace is something that you do want to get into, it's well worth looking at membership of the MAA. We are one of the strongest technology clusters in the world, as I've said, and we have a really strong voice in the aerospace industry.
What a fantastic way to finish. Nicola, thank you so much for giving up your time today to come and share that fantastic initiative with our listeners. I will share all of the contact details and the website with them in the comments below so that they're able to connect. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.